In this video, we will be looking at the movement of substances across a plasma membrane in living organisms. So let's look at the examples given over here. Under passive transport, simple diffusion. Okay, so this is the alveolus and the surrounding blood capillary. So gaseous exchange happen. You get to see oxygen from the air enters into the alveolus, so there's high concentration of oxygen gas in the alveolus as compared to lower concentration gradient of oxygen over here. Okay, so simple diffusion happens that this oxygen from the alveolus will diffuse into the oxygen into the red blood cells that is flowing within this capillary because of the difference in the concentration gradient. So it is down the concentration gradient. Okay, for carbon dioxide, so this is deoxygenated blood that is circulating from the body, and then now as it passes through this alveolus, okay, the red blood cells here having higher concentration of carbon dioxide as compared to the concentration of carbon dioxide in the alveolus. So simple diffusion happens that this carbon dioxide will diffuse out of the blood capillary into the alveolus, and then subsequently it is expelled out of the lung when we exhale. Okay, so that is the first example through simple diffusion. Okay, the second example here it says reabsorption of water, which is by means of osmosis. Okay, that means the movement of water molecules. Reabsorption of water by osmosis through the renal tubule in the kidney. Okay, this is the tubules in the kidney. So what happens is that when water passes through the tubule, water with other solutes that passes through, okay, along the tube there will be water and salts reabsorption. So this 65% of salt and water which were filtered at the glomerulus are reabsorbed back into the blood in the proximal tubule. Okay, so the proximal tubule, the location is over here. Okay, proximal tubule, and then another 20% of water is reabsorbed in the descending loop of Henle. Okay, descending loop of Henle. Descend, and this is ascending. Okay, so you can see that the process of reabsorption of water. Okay, go back to the slides just now. That happens in the tubule, the renal tubule in the kidney, is by osmosis. Okay, so it doesn't require energy, and it is from the high concentration of water particles to region of lower concentration of water particles. Reabsorb, that means from the tubule to the surrounding blood capillaries. That means it is being reabsorbed back to our body. Okay, the third example is absorption of water by the plant root hair cell, also by means of osmosis. Okay, we have actually discussed this in our previous lesson. Okay, so you get to see picture. This is the root cells. This is the root hair. Okay, the elongated, the extended or the modified epidermal cells. Okay, to increase surface area so that water and salt uptake is increased. So you can see over here the surroundings, they are the soil particles with the soil water. So water diffuse into the root hair cells by means of osmosis from a high concentration of water molecules to a lower concentration of water molecules within the cell sept of the vacuole over here, the root cells. Okay, so net movement of water into the root hair cells by means of osmosis. Okay, and then the fourth example given is the absorption of fructose molecule in the villus. Okay, remember the villus structure, and this happens by facilitated diffusion. Okay, let's go and look back. Look at the diagram. Okay, so this is the villi. Villi, if it is more than one, villus, singular, we call it as villus. So you have the epithelial cells over here, and these are the blood vessels, the blood capillaries. So absorption takes place. So this is in the lumen. So can you imagine that? In the lumen has got a lot of these nutrients, the digested food particles. So in its simplest form, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, fat molecules. So the absorption of, go back to the slide just now, fructose molecule, okay, from the lumen into the epithelial cells and into the blood capillaries. This happens by means of facilitated diffusion with the help of carrier protein. Okay, so from here, passive transports, remember we have simple diffusion, osmosis, and also facilitated diffusion. So examples are given, several examples here which you can readily provide when you are asked to give example. Okay, how about active transport in organisms? Okay, this one says absorption of glucose and amino acids in the villus. Okay, so that means also in villus. Okay, so towards the end of absorption, when the concentration of glucose and amino acids is now lesser in the lumen as compared to the one here in the villus. So these solutes have to diffuse in against the concentration gradient. So this has to happen through active transport. That means in the expenditure of energy, ATP is required to transport these substances against the concentration gradient. Okay, second example is given for a reabsorption of glucose through the renal tubule in the kidney. Reabsorption of glucose. Okay, so also this, the same picture, the renal tubule. So glucose is reabsorbed from the tubule to the surrounding blood capillaries by means of active transports. Okay, so in certain conditions where it has to travel against the concentration gradient. Okay, another one is transport of sucrose from a leaf to a phloem tissue. Okay, sucrose from the leaf to a phloem tissue. Okay, still remember the leaf as the organ where photosynthesis happens. Okay, so the sucrose will be transported to the phloem which serves to transport organic substances from photosynthesis. So again, in a condition where it is against the concentration gradient, that this requires active transport in the expenditure of energy. Okay, another one is the absorption of mineral ions by a plant root hair cell. Okay, so there's a picture given in your textbook. Okay, so just now we talk about the root hair cells also when we talk about water absorption. So water absorption is by osmosis, doesn't require energy from the soil water to the root hair cells. But for mineral ions, it is from the surrounding soil water as well. Okay, from the surrounding soil water, from the surrounding soil particles into the root hair cells. It is by means of active transport. Okay, the reason is because inside the root hair cells here has got higher concentration of ions as compared to the surrounding. Okay, so that's why it has to use energy to be transported in, and that means by means of active transport. Okay, so again, this table is giving us examples of the movement of substances across a plasma membrane in the living organisms.